You can't use the main elevator, the security guard said, barely looking up from his newspaper. His name tag read Marcus, and his tone suggested this wasn't the first time he'd delivered this message to someone like me today. I stood there in the marble lobby of the prestigious Meridian Tower in downtown Chicago, wearing my leather jacket and holding a motorcycle helmet under my arm. The autumn rain had soaked through my clothes during the ride from the bank, and I probably looked exactly like what Marcus assumed I was. Just another delivery guy trying to take shortcuts through the building. My name is Ethan Carter. I'm 34 years old, and I run a logistics company that started with just me and a motorcycle 5 years ago. What Marcus didn't know was that I had just signed the papers to purchase this entire building for $47 million. Let me tell you how I got here, and if you're watching this from somewhere in the world, drop a comment below and let me know what city you're from. I'd love to see how far this story reaches. The service elevator is around the corner, Marcus continued, pointing with his pen toward a dimly lit hallway. Deliveries go to the loading dock on sub-level B. I almost laughed. Here I was, holding the deed to his workplace in my jacket pocket, being told I couldn't use my own elevator. But instead of correcting him, I decided to play along. Sometimes you learn more about people when they don't know who you really are. Thanks, I said simply, walking toward the service elevator he'd indicated. The service elevator was a stark contrast to the polished main lobby. Scratch metal walls, flickering fluorescent lights, and the lingering smell of cleaning supplies. As I rode up to the 23rd floor, the floor that would soon house my company's new headquarters, I thought about how I'd ended up in this moment. It started 3 weeks ago when my assistant, Grace, called me frantically. "Ethan, you need to get to First National Bank immediately. There's been some kind of mix-up with the Meridian Tower purchase." I'd been in the middle of a delivery run. Yes, I still did them occasionally, partly for the exercise and partly to stay connected to how my business started. When you build a company from nothing, you never forget where you came from. The bank meeting was a disaster. The sellers, the prestigious Hawthorne family, had apparently been under the impression they were dealing with some corporate executive, not someone who showed up on a motorcycle wearing jeans and a leather jacket. "Are you sure you're Ethan Carter of Carter Logistics?" Mrs. Eleanor Hawthorne had asked, her perfectly manicured eyebrows raised in obvious skepticism. She was probably in her 60s, dressed in what I assumed was a very expensive suit, with the kind of jewelry that cost more than most people's cars. "Last time I checked," I had replied, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. The awkward silence that followed was broken by her son, William Hawthorne, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Mother, his financial credentials have been verified multiple times. The man has $47 million in liquid assets." But the damage was already done. I could see the doubt in their eyes, the way they whispered among themselves. To them, I was just some upstart who got lucky, not someone worthy of owning their family's crown jewel property. Now, as the service elevator reached the 23rd floor, I stepped out into what would soon be my domain. The entire floor was empty, pristine, and filled with potential. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of Lake Michigan, and I could already envision where my team would sit, where we'd hold our strategy meetings, where we'd plan the next phase of our expansion. I pulled out my phone and called my lawyer, David Chen. "David, it's Ethan. The papers are signed, the money's transferred. I officially own the Meridian Tower." "Congratulations, Ethan. How does it feel to own one of Chicago's most prestigious commercial buildings?" I looked back toward the service elevator, thinking about Marcus downstairs and the Hawthorne family's reaction at the bank. "Ask me again in a few days. I think I'm going to have some fun with this." What I didn't know was that my fun was about to become a lot more complicated than I had imagined. The next morning, I decided to visit my new building again, but this time I dressed the part. Navy suit, Italian leather shoes, briefcase, the whole corporate executive look. I wanted to see how differently I'd be treated when I fit people's expectations. The difference was immediate and almost comical. The same security guard, Marcus, practically leaped to his feet when I entered the lobby. "Good morning, sir. How can I assist you today?" His voice had completely changed. Gone was the dismissive tone from yesterday. "I need to access the 23rd floor," I said, matching his professional demeanor. "Of course, sir. The main elevator is right this way." He gestured toward the polished elevator bank with the kind of reverence usually reserved for royalty. As I rode the elevator up, I couldn't help but think about the absurdity of it all. Same person, different clothes, completely different treatment. It was a lesson I'd learned repeatedly in business. People make assumptions based on appearances, and those assumptions can either open doors or slam them shut. The 23rd floor looked even better in the morning light. I spent the next hour walking through the space, making mental notes, taking photos for my team. This was going to be perfect for our expansion plans. My phone buzzed with a call from Grace. "Ethan, we have a problem. Mrs. Hawthorne is here at the office, and she's not happy." "What's she want?" "She's demanding to speak with you. She says there's been a mistake with the building sale, something about fraud and misrepresentation. She brought her lawyer." I sighed. I had hoped the Hawthorns would simply take their money and move on, but apparently their pride was more bruised than I'd realized. "Tell her I'll be there in 20 minutes. When I arrived at my current office, a modest space in a converted warehouse that had served us well for 3 years, Mrs. Hawthorne was pacing like a caged tiger. Her lawyer, a sharp-faced man in his 50s, sat rigidly in one of our conference room chairs. "Mr. Carter," Mrs. Hawthorne began before I'd even sat down, "I believe there's been a significant misunderstanding regarding the sale of the Meridian Tower." "I'm listening," I said calmly. "When we agreed to sell to Carter Logistics, we were under the impression we were dealing with an established, reputable company, not some motorcycle delivery service." Her lawyer leaned forward. "My client is prepared to return your deposit and cancel the sale. We believe the transaction was completed under false pretenses." I couldn't help but smile. "Mrs. Hawthorne, let me ask you something. When you investigated Carter Logistics before agreeing to sell, what did you find?" She looked confused. "Well, we found that you have the necessary funds, obviously, and that your company has been growing steadily. And our annual revenue?" Her lawyer consulted his notes. "Approximately 12 million last year, projected 15 million this year. And our client base?" "Some of the largest corporations in the Midwest," he admitted reluctantly. "So the only thing that bothers you is that I sometimes wear a leather jacket and ride a motorcycle." The room fell silent. Mrs. Hawthorne's face was turning red, but I wasn't finished. "Mrs. Hawthorne, I started this company with a $500 motorcycle and a dream. I've built it into something that employs 43 people and serves clients across 6 states. I've done this by focusing on results, not appearances. The fact that I don't fit your idea of what a successful businessman should look like doesn't change the reality of what I've accomplished." I stood up and walked to the window. "The sale is final. The money has been transferred. Tomorrow, I'll be moving my team into the Meridian Tower, and we'll continue to grow our business from there. Whether you approve of how I dress or what I drive is irrelevant." Mrs. Hawthorne's lawyer whispered something in her ear. She nodded reluctantly. "Mr. Carter," she said finally, "perhaps we were hasty in our judgment." "Perhaps you were." After they left, Grace came into my office. "So what's the plan for tomorrow?" I grinned. "Tomorrow, we make our grand entrance, and I think I know exactly how I want to do it. But as I sat there planning our move to the Meridian Tower, I had no idea that the real drama was just beginning. The Hawthorne family had more secrets than I realized, and my purchase of their building was about to uncover something that would change everything. Moving day arrived with typical Chicago weather: cold, windy, and threatening snow. Our team was excited about the move to the prestigious Meridian Tower, and I had decided to make an entrance that would send a clear message about who we were and what we represented. I rode my motorcycle to the building, followed by a convoy of our company trucks. As I pulled up to the main entrance, I saw Marcus through the glass doors. He was already reaching for his radio, probably to call about the delivery guy who was back. I walked into the lobby, helmet under my arm, and approached the security desk. Marcus looked up with that familiar expression of annoyance. "I told you yesterday, deliveries go to the—" "Actually, Marcus," I interrupted, pulling out a set of keys, "I think there's been a misunderstanding." His eyes widened as I held up the keys to the building. "My name is Ethan Carter, and as of 3 days ago, I'm the owner of this building. These are my elevators now." The color drained from Marcus's face. "Sir, I had no idea. I'm so sorry." "Don't apologize," I said, extending my hand for a handshake. "You were doing your job. But maybe in the future, don't assume you know someone's story based on how they're dressed." Over the next hour, our team moved in. It was incredible to watch the transformation. The same people who had ignored us or looked down on us the day before were now falling over themselves to be helpful and accommodating. But the real surprise came around noon, when I received an unexpected visitor. William Hawthorne, Mrs. Eleanor Hawthorne's son, stepped off the elevator looking nervous and carrying a thick manila envelope. "Mr. Carter, I was hoping we could talk privately." We went to my new office, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a spectacular view of the city. William sat down heavily in the chair across from my desk. "I owe you an explanation," he began, "about my mother, about her reaction to the sale." "I'm listening." "Yes, the Meridian Tower wasn't just a property investment for our family. My grandfather built it in 1987, and it was supposed to be his legacy. But over the years, maintaining it became financially challenging." He opened the envelope and pulled out several documents. "The truth is, we've been hemorrhaging money for the past 5 years. Bad investments, economic downturns, and some poor business decisions put us in a position where we had to sell." I looked at the financial statements he was showing me. The numbers were worse than I had imagined. "My mother was embarrassed," William continued. "The idea that we were selling our family's crown jewel to someone she perceived as beneath our social status. It was devastating to her pride." "But that's not the whole story, is it?" I asked. Something in his demeanor suggested there was more. William hesitated, then pulled out another document. "There's something else. When we were going through my grandfather's papers to prepare for the sale, we found this." It was a letter dated 30 years ago, written in elegant handwriting. As I read it, my understanding of everything changed. The letter was from my grandfather, a man I'd never met who had died when I was 2 years old. It was addressed to William's grandfather, thanking him for a loan that had helped save my family's small trucking business during a difficult time. "Your grandfather helped my grandfather?" I asked, incredulous. "More than that," William said. "According to this letter and the financial records we found, your grandfather's trucking company was the foundation that your father built upon, and eventually the foundation that you built Carter Logistics upon." I sat back in my chair, stunned. "So, in a way, the Meridian Tower helped create the company that eventually bought it." "Exactly." William smiled for the first time since he'd arrived. "When I showed this to my mother, it changed her perspective completely. She wanted me to bring this to you, along with her apologies." He reached into the envelope one more time and pulled out a small, framed photograph. It showed 2 men shaking hands in front of a building. My grandfather and his grandfather, more than 3 decades ago. "She thought you might like to have this." I held the photograph, looking at my grandfather's face. A face I'd only seen in a few old family photos. He was younger than I am now, dressed in work clothes, but his expression was determined and hopeful. It was the same expression I'd seen in the mirror on the day I started Carter Logistics. "William, thank you for bringing this. It means more than you know." As he prepared to leave, William turned back. "Mr. Carter, I have one more thing to say. Yesterday, When I saw how you handled my mother's accusations, how you stood your ground while remaining respectful, I realized something. You didn't just buy our building, you earned it. After he left, I sat alone in my new office, looking out at the Chicago skyline and holding the photograph of my grandfather. The security guard who had told me I couldn't use the main elevator, the Hawthorne family who had doubted my worthiness, the employees who had judged me by my appearance, none of them had seen the full picture. But that's the thing about success. It's not about fitting into other people's expectations. It's about staying true to yourself, working hard, and sometimes discovering that your story is connected to something much bigger than you ever imagined. As I settled into my new office, I realized that owning the Meridian Tower wasn't just about having a prestigious address. It was about honoring the legacy of the people who came before me, while building something new for the people who would come after. The elevator that I'd been told I couldn't use was now mine, along with every floor it served. But more importantly, I'd learned that the real elevator in life isn't made of steel and cables. It's made of determination, respect, and the willingness to prove yourself through your actions, not your appearance. Thanks for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. I'd love to connect with viewers from around the world. What did you think about Ethan's journey from being mistaken for a delivery driver to owning the entire building? Share your thoughts below.